Carl Edwards will join Amazon Prime Video in 2025, and Auto Club Speedway's future is very uncertain. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just show them straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Connor Zillage, Justin Allgaier, and Carson Quaffel's 2025 Carolina carport schemes that will see in 5 combined races in 2025. All 3 of these schemes look really solid. Love the colors of them. Junior Motorsports knocked this one out of the park. Looking forward to see them on the racetrack throughout the year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Noah Gragson's 2025 Be For Roost scheme that will see in 5 Cup races in 2025, including, I believe, this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Scheme looks very similar to last year's scheme that I believe he had. It does look okay in my opinion. Do like the colors. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2025 Backstreet Boys scheme that we'll see this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. A couple years ago, it was Creed, or last year was Creed. 2023 was Guns N' Roses with Legacy, and now you've got the Backstreet Boys coming in and sponsoring. I think the car looks really great. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Las Vegas. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeb Burton's 2025 Sprayway scheme that we'll see in select race in 2025. Scheme looks okay in my opinion. I'm not the big fan. I think there's too much contrast going on with the scheme, but it's good that Jeb Burton has a new sponsor. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Nick Light's 2025 Priority Line scheme that will see in 7 NASCAR Xfinity races in 2025, including next weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Scheme's okay in my opinion. I'm glad to see the team have a new sponsor. The scheme is overall okay. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2025 Real American Beer scheme that we'll see this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. This, of course, in association with the Hulk Hogan brand. I think the car actually looks really good. I love the American look on it. It looks really solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to see it on the racetrack this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rebel Bourbon. As there was a report by Adam Stern earlier today that Rebel Bourbon is working on their second product that is going to be releasing at some time throughout the 2025 season in association with Rich Chols Racing and the organization itself. And Lusco, who owns Rebel Bourbon, has said that they've had a massive return on investment and they've basically tripled their sales, I believe, in 2024 and also 2025. Rebel Bourbon, of course, sponsors Kyle Busch in select race this year, including a couple weeks ago at Circuit of the Americas. Of course, they've done some alcohol stuff with Kyle Busch recently, and they're going to continue working toward that as Rebel Bourbon will work to continue being and making really good products for the team going forward. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sonic Automotive. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today, the Sonic Automotive has filed for a trademark for the name Echo Park Speedway. They have not revealed which track exactly will get the name Echo Park Speedway, but Echo Park is in association with Sonic Automotive. One big name that I noticed on there was Bruton Smith, or David Smith, someone associated with the Smith family. I believe Marcus Smith is also associated with this group as well. Most likely, the track that is going to get this partnership is probably going to be Texas Motor Speedway, considering Texas has had Echo Park in the past. I do think Dover, however, took the name ownership not too long ago, so this is going to be kind of similar to what happened to Lowe's Motor Speedway, right? That's how this partnership is probably going to work. I think it's going to be interesting to see what track exactly with the Echo Park and the SMI brand happens going forward, but it looks like we're going to be having a name change going forward in the next couple of years. And I think it's going to be pretty cool to see what racetrack gets the new Sonic Automotive brand in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about finishes. As it was reported by Trey Ryan, aka the NASCAR Insights account, they report that in the first 4 races of 2025, 34 cars have failed to finish due to accidents throughout the first 4 events. That is the most we have seen since 1958, which was 67 years ago. That is absolutely wild. Though, of course, we've had a couple super speedway races. A lot of cars got taken out in the Daytona 500 and some big crashes, including at the end. And also, of course, you saw some big wrecks at Atlanta. And then, of course, at Coda and Phoenix, especially Phoenix, that really big one that took out guys like Noah Gragson, Chase Briscoe, among other drivers in the field. You have had a lot of cars get involved in crashes. I'm not sure if that's going to change this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, though we can have a lot of long green flag runs in the event. It's kind of crazy to see how many cars have failed to finish races throughout the 2025 season, and I don't think it's going to be changing anytime soon with how competitive and how crazy the field can be. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Morgan & Morgan. As it was announced earlier today that Morgan & Morgan will sponsor Frankie Muniz in select NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series races in 2025, including this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Morgan & Morgan's had a big association with the Ram Brothers Racing organization, I believe, over the course of the last couple of years, and they also sponsor Kyle Busch in select NASCAR Cup races, which I believe they're going to be sponsoring Kyle Busch in the second half of 2025. They have not revealed the truck currently at the moment that they are going to be using, but I think it's pretty cool to see that Frankie Muniz is picking up a new sponsor. He's had a new sponsor for every single truck race. I think he had a movie that he's been associated with at Daytona, and then of course I think he had another movie associated with him at Atlanta. So now he's got an outside sponsor working with him in 2025, and that of course being Morgan & Morgan. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chelsea Green. As it was announced yesterday that Chelsea Green has been officially named the honorary pace car driver for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Chelsea Green, for those who don't know, was announced as the 2025 USA Women's WWE Champion, and she's been moving up the ranks in the WWE over the course of the last couple of years. She's become very popular in the WWE. She does have a heel approach, if I remember correctly, but she's someone that, of course, we've seen the WWE crossover, which a lot of NASCAR and WWE fans are very closely aligned together, because some people say NASCAR is fake, of course, which I don't think NASCAR is fake personally, but I think it's pretty wild to see we've got another WWE personnel coming in and working in the sport as the honorary pace car driver. I don't know what other races down the road she could end up showing up to. Of course, we've seen William Byron appear on WWE multiple times after winning the Daytona 500. I think it's pretty cool that Chelsea Green will be the honorary pace car driver for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stephen Mallozzi. As it was announced earlier today that Stephen Mallozzi will drive the number 2 truck for the Raymond Brothers Racing organization this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. This will be the first of multiple schedule starts I believe that Stephen Mallozzi is going to have with the program in 2025. Now, Stephen Mallozzi is a law student who also, of course, has a big story around the Outback, of course, and being a server at Outback Steakhouse, which, of course, gave him an opportunity to be sponsored by Outback in select truck series races over the course of the last couple of years. I'm not sure if Outback is going to be sponsoring this weekend, but I think Steven is someone who's shown some potential in the past, though realistically with the Rain Brothers Racing organization, we should not be expecting Steven to be a major factor in serious contender to go to victory lane. But I could see him, if this team can continue showing the speed they've shown at times this year, I could see Steve Mallozzi putting up together a solid run this weekend. I could see Steve Mallozzi contending maybe, let's say, for a top 15 or maybe a top 25 by the end of the day. Who knows at this point, because sometimes the race at Las Vegas can be wild and absolutely crazy. We'll see what Steve Mallozzi can do as he looks to run really strong and really solid with the Rain Brothers Racing organization. We'll see what he can do with the team and the organization this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. As it was announced earlier this evening that Ty Gibbs will officially make his sprint car debut later this week at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the High Limit Racing Series, driving the number 81 for Chad Boat Industries. Ty Gibbs has been doing some sprint car racing and some dirt racing throughout the offseason. He did, of course, compete in the Chili Bowl Nationals, I believe, for CB Industries. And he also has had some decent success there. He competed in the Chili Bowl, I believe, made it to the G main or the F main. He also was debuting along with Kyle Busch, who made it all the way up, I believe, to the C or D main before he unfortunately got eliminated because he didn't have the best qualifying night. But Ty Gibbs made it pretty far in there. And Ty Gibbs is out there trying to get better as a race car driver. Because let's be real,
honest, Ty Gibbs has been off to an abysmal start in 2025, as Ty Gibbs only had one top 25 finish, one top 25 finish, I believe, in the first 4 races of this season. We've learned this from Chris Rebelli. Look how strong he's been to start 2025, and Bell's had 3 straight victories, is trying to become the first driver to win 4 races in a row since 2007 when Jimmy Johnson did it, the first driver to do it in the 2020s. I think he looks to run really well for sure. I think that this Gibbs getting this experience will definitely help him for sure. This is a really good team to work with, and I do expect that Ty Gibbs will show some really solid pace and really strong speed. Looking forward to see what he can do in the sprint car race with the High Limit Series. Kyle Larson and Chris Bell also will be competing in the High Limit event at Las Vegas on Thursday. We'll see what Ty Gibbs can do later this week at Las Vegas Dirt Track. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Oscar Piastri. As it was announced earlier this afternoon, the Oscar Piastri has officially signed a multi-year contract extension with McLaren. They did not reveal the official details on how long the contract extension exactly is going to be, but originally Oscar Piastri only had a contract through 2026, which he has signed that extension at the end of 2023. Oscar Piastri over the last year or so has become a really strong driver in Formula 1, as I believe he's picked up 2 or 3 wins in Formula 1 in 2024. And he's looking to continue that really strong start to the season in 2025, as McLaren looks to be the team to be, as McLaren was the fastest team and organization in the second half of 2024. Oscar is very, very talented in my opinion, and I think he is going to be someone that's going to be the one to watch out for as he looks to try to win his first Formula 1 championship this year. His teammate Lando Norris is going into this season as a favorite. Yes, Max Verstappen is looking to become only, I believe, the second driver in Formula 1 history to win 5 championships in a row, which I think Max has a really good chance and opportunity to do that this year. Same with Lewis Hamilton, who's looking for his first Formula 1 championship since 2020 with the Ferrari team. But I think Oscar Piastri will be in the conversation. I think signing this extension with McLaren is really, really huge. Maybe down the road we get to see him do some NASCAR stuff, because I know he's been interested in doing some stuff in the NASCAR Cup Series and maybe doing a driver swap at one point with Kyle Larson, which I think is certainly possible at this point. So we'll see what happens in regards to Oscar Piastri, but it's good to see that he has officially signed a multi-year contract extension with McLaren starting in 2025. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about safety culture. Now, this image was resurfaced on the NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia account earlier tonight, but it looks like safety culture will be back with Trackhouse Racing in 2025 and will sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen in select NASCAR Cup Series races in 2025. When I take a look at this blurred out image, I gotta say the car actually looks really, really good. It looks like it's going to be either a yellow or a white number, and it's going to have a purple image very similar to the car that he had in 2024 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, Safety Culture sponsors Shane Van Gisbergen in about a third of the races last year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and this is a sponsor where he picked up his first win at Portland. Safety Culture was the sponsor on the car. Now, it's unknown how many races Safety Culture, like I said, is going to sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen this year. Red Bull, of course, will sponsor SVG for 5 races this year, including this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The first time we're going to see the Red Bull brand. And of course, WeatherTech is sponsoring a lot more races with Shane Van Gisbergen this year. They're still probably going to have other sponsors like Wendy's and other companies. And we also know Cubota is going to be sponsoring him in that Watkins Glen Xfinity Series race later this year. Safety Culture has been really loyal to Shane Van Gisbergen over the course of the last couple years throughout motorsports, and it looks like they'll be back with SVG in 2025 in select races. I would think maybe one of the road course races like Chicago, perhaps. We'll see what sponsorship Shane Van Gisbergen will have, but it looks like Safety Culture will be sponsoring SVG in 2025, probably in the next couple weeks or so. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about a Goodyear tire test. As it was reported by Toby Christie from TobyChristie.com, it looks like there is going to be another Goodyear tire test that is going to be taking place next week on March 18th at Charlotte Motor Speedway. For the NASCAR Cup Series, it's going to be Ryan Blaney for Ford, Chase Briscoe for Toyota, and William Byron for Chevrolet. Of course, Ryan Blaney drives the 12, Chase Briscoe drives the 19, and William Byron drives the 24. For the Xfinity Series, it's going to be Sheldon Creed, who of course drives a 00 car for the Haas factory team with the Ford camp, Eric Almirola, who drives the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing from the Toyota camp, and Austin Hill, who will be driving the number 21 car from the Chevrolet camp. All these drivers make a lot of sense here. All of them had some decent success on mile and a halves in the past, and I think they're going to be able to provide a lot of really good analysis, because what I think they're looking for is a tire that can perform really solidly and very, very well to have the best racing product that we can see when we get to the track at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Well, I think the next-gen car has ran really well at Charlotte. I think the last Cup Series race at Coke 600, though it was improving throughout the event, it did show some issues and some potential issues that the next-gen car has been showing recently at these types of tracks. We'll see how this test can go for the teams. They're probably looking for a compound that can provide a lot more wear throughout the event, even though I think there's been good tire wear on the mile and a half. I think they're looking for more tire wear, which is something that you want. You want as much tire, not like super tire wear like we saw at Bristol all the time, but you want some tire wear to create the better racing product at these types of tracks. I think it's really huge nonetheless to see this, and pretty good to see that there will be a tire test to try to see if we can get the best racing product that we can see later this year at Charlotte Motor Speedway in a couple months from now. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Takuma Sato. As it was officially announced earlier today that Takuma Sato will be officially competing in the 2025 Indianapolis 500, driving the number 75 car for Rahal Lunderman Lanigan Racing. This would be the second straight year that Takuma Sato has driven for Rahal, and about the third or fourth year, I believe, he has driven for this organization. Now, Takuma Sato, for those who do not know, who've become IndyCar fans very, very recently in the last couple of years, Takuma Sato is a two-time Indianapolis 500 champion. He won in 2017 with Andretti Autosport at the time, which is now Andretti Global, and he also won in 2020 in the number 30 car for Rahal Lunderman Lanigan. If there's someone that really can help this team get better on their qualifying stats, it is definitely Takuma Sato, because one of the issues that Rahal has had over the course of the last couple of years at the Indy 500 is making the race. They almost once again had Graham Rahal fail to make the Indy 500 this past year, and they really struggled to get into the show. Takuma Sato is going to be there to provide a lot of analysis, and I think if Takuma can get these cars up to speed, I could see him definitely contending to be up front in the event, because Takuma, while we don't know how much longer Takuma Sato is going to be competing in the Indy 500 down the road, I think you want to see him be super, super competitive, because I think it'd be huge for IndyCar if Takuma could become one of, I believe, only about 7 or 8 drivers who have 3 Indianapolis 500s. It would be an amazing accomplishment. I don't know if we'll ever get 4, but if the Rahal cars can show some really good pace and speed this year, which I'm not sure if they're going to, and it's a little bit worrisome for Graham Rahal, but I think, because they've lost Christian Lundgaard too, which I think Christian brought a lot of speed to that program last year in the Indy 500 as well, with him being an arrow, which I think he's going to have a chance and opportunity to win a lot of races in IndyCar this year, including next week at Thermal, but I look for Takuma to be a major factor. Now, in regards to the 35th car, Catherine Legge is working on a deal to get into this year's Indianapolis 500 currently at the moment with Honda. There's been some rumors about a team like Brian Herta Autosport, David Land, and I believe Tony Donahue mentioned it, that Brian Herta Autosport is looking to maybe run a car in this year's Indy 500, but there's been nothing officially announced on that front at this point. I think it's going to be good to see Takuma Sato compete in this year's Indy 500, and I think we'll have a solid chance and opportunity to be very competitive later this year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Justin Haley. As it was announced yesterday that Justin Haley will drive the 07 for Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. This will be Justin Haley's second of multiple scheduled Truck Series starts in 2025. Now, he did compete at Daytona International Speedway in the Truck Series in the number 7 truck, and he actually showed some solid pace and really good speed in the event, but wasn't up front like I expected him to be throughout the whole entire event as a whole. Now, we're going to track where Spire Motorsports has been very, very good, because these are technically KBM trucks from a couple years ago, and Kyle Busch, of course, won with this truck in 2023. And remember, last year in the Truck Series, we saw Roger Krug pick up his first career NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series win, which I think he's got a really good chance and opportunity to defend that, even though Corey Heim is back this year. And I think he's also got a really good chance to get it done. But I expect Justin Haley to be a factor. He's been solid in the Xfinity Series at this track in the past. Not sure how he'll do do in Cup in the event, but I think with the Spire organization and how quick they've been in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series over the course of the last couple of years, I look for Justin Haley to be a major factor in series contender to go to victory lane, though he's going to have to go through some really strong competitors like Chandler Smith, Lane Riggs, Corey Heim, Roger Carruth, Tyler Ankrum, who I think is going to have an outside chance and opportunity to pick up the win in victory. Gio Ruggiero, who showed really good speed as well in the first couple races of the season. I think that speed is going to continue for him as well. And same with Daniel Hemrick, who I think will be a factor this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. But at the end of the day, I think Justin Haley will have a solid chance and opportunity, and I do think he'll be somewhat of a factor in series contender to pick up his first truck win in nearly 7 years at this weekend's race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we kind of talked about the story on the channel this past week, but this story kind of went under the radar. But it was announced and confirmed by the Kyle Busch fan page, that Kyle Busch will officially be in the CW booth this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He'll be joining Adam Alexander and Jay McMurray in the booth for the Xfinity Series race. Now, many people were wondering why Kyle Busch will be in the CW booth this weekend. Well, Park is going to be competing in the 12 Hours of Sebring this weekend with Forte Racing in the number 78 team, which of course has big association with Big Machine Racing, the team that Parker did compete with in the Rolex 24, and their team had a chance to win until they got caught up in a crash in the middle or end of the event. Kyle Busch has been in the CW, not the CW, but has been in the Xfinity Series booth in the past, and I think he's done a really good job in the booth. You go back to 2020 when he was in a booth for a couple races like at Bristol Motor Speedway. I believe we saw Noah Gragson win that event, I'm pretty sure, in the 2020 year, and I think Kyle Busch did a really solid and really, really good job in that booth. So I expect Kyle Busch to be really, really strong this year, and I think he'll do a fantastic job with the CW. Now, I think this is the only race that Kyle Busch will be in the booth this year. And we could see other people down the road like a Kurt Busch, maybe Carl Leberts, who we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit, because I think Carl being in the CW booth would be really fun to see as well, by the way. But I think it's pretty awesome to see nonetheless that Kyle Busch is going to get in the booth, because I think he'll be fun to listen to, and I don't think he's going to hold back in any way, shape, or form. I think he's going to let rip. I think he's going to let fly, and I think that he's going to do a fantastic and really good job when he gets into CW booth for sure this weekend at Las Vegas. Excited to see what he can provide to the table later this year, or later this week, I should say, at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Phoenix TV ratings from this past week. And honestly, they're very, very interesting. Now, Adam Stern put out not just the ratings for the NASCAR Cup race for the Shriners Children 500, but he also put the ratings out for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race as well. According to Adam Stern, for the Cup race, FS1 got a 1.43 rating and 2.82 million viewers for the NASCAR Cup Series event. It is not comparable to 2024 because the race was on main broadcast in 2024. That race drew, I believe, around 4 million viewers in the event. And this event is one of the most watched cable races, including, I believe, the Cindy Yen. This is the most watched cable race that I think we've seen since, I believe, 2021 at Darlington, when 2.8 million people tuned in. 2.82 million viewers for a cable race on FS1 is honestly not that bad. And I'm thinking to myself right now, why can't we have more races on broadcast? Because personally, I think there should be more races on broadcast like the IndyCar series is going to do this year. And I do think in 2025, 26, I should say, I think they are going to renegotiate the contract to have more races on broadcast, because the more eyes you can get on your series, the better it's going to be. But honestly, not a bad time. Now, that being said, I do think down the road, like I said, they need to put more races on broadcast, not just for Fox, but I think also for NBC as well. They took a lot more money. I wonder if in the contract there is a possibility of putting more races on the main broadcast, because I think they need to do that because they need to make it bigger than it is, and I think that is something that needs to happen. Now, the Xfinity Series, on the other hand, actually had a pretty big increase, as it was also reported by Adam Stern that the CW got a 1.2 million viewers in the Xfinity Series event at Phoenix. That is up 13% from 2024. And this even despite the fact that multiple parts of the country were not able to view the NASCAR Xfinity Series race. While I do think the number is really good for the Xfinity Series and every single race has had at least 1 million people tune in, They need to open up the opportunity for the app to be available, and obviously there were certain parts of the country that had issues viewing the event, which NASCAR has addressed this, and the CW has addressed the situation within 24 hours of the event, which really needed to be addressed, and I'm glad they did. But I think that's still a really solid number for the Xfinity Series, even with the issues that ended up happening. So I think this is definitely positive for both series, and I think while Cup was down from the main event last year, obviously it was on cable, and less people are going to tune into cable races than they're going to tune in the main broadcast races. So I think this is a massive thumbs up for sure, and I think the ratings are very solid, all things considered, for the Xfinity Series in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, Caitlin Vinci is one of the co-hosts, of course, on the Happy Harvick podcast, who works with Kevin Harvick on this podcast, basically put up a very interesting excerpt and clip that surfaced from this past week's Happy Harvick podcast, talking about the officiating, the Catherine Legge situation, which we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit, and among other things as well. But Kevin Harvick did not hold back in this 20-second clip in regards to NASCAR officiating. He called NASCAR officiating very, very sloppy and really, really inconsistent, and called a lot of the BS out in regards to NASCAR officiating by saying that it is very, very sloppy and it's not really good currently at the moment. I 100% agree with Kevin Harvick on this about NASCAR's officiating, and it's good to see that Fox is starting to let their people in their group not be held back as much. It seems like Kevin Harvick is not holding back anymore. We saw him call him out at Phoenix, and we talked about it on the channel a couple days ago on Monday, but it seems like they're becoming less and less hands-on, and they're being a little more hands-off, which I'll give Fox a lot more props on that. But I want to see more personalities call out NASCAR on things, and I don't want a bunch of yes-men really defending NASCAR like certain people in the industry. I think that Kevin Harvick needs to do this, and I think that there are a lot more drivers and people in the industry that need to be more outspoken. And going back to the NASCAR officiating side of things and the inconsistencies in regards to the officiating, this, of course, is in reference to the Austin Cindric penalty that probably should have happened, where Austin probably should have been suspended for this past weekend at Phoenix for what happened in Circuit of the Americas. Kevin Harvick says a right hook is a right hook. It doesn't matter the speed. He doesn't really understand why speed is brought upon it, which I 100% agree. I don't think speed should be brought upon when it comes to right hook. A right hook is a right hook, no matter what, and absolutely there should have been penalties handed out a lot more harsher. I think Cindric should have been suspended. I get 50 points is a really big penalty, but I think I'll agree with most of the drivers, like Kevin Harvick, like Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Ty Dillon, who got right hooked by Austin Cindric. I do believe that there needs to be a little more consistency on that front with suspensions, and I think it needs to be something consistent across the board. And I absolutely love the fact that Kevin Harvick is not being held back in regards to these situations, as I think the drivers and the people in the industry need to be a lot more outspoken on these things. And again, I'm glad to see that they're not holding him back in this situation. I want to see more drivers be outspoken like Christopher has been as well recently. I really hope this continues going forward, and I really hope we continue seeing more of this kind of stuff happening in regards to drivers and people in the industry not being held back going into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Amazon Prime. Now, we are going to talk about Carl Edwards at the end of this episode, but we're first going to talk about some more announcements in regards to Amazon Prime from earlier today. As it was announced earlier today, that Amazon Prime has officially announced their pit road reporters for this year. And they're going to have 3 people on pit road this year. It is going to be Kim Kuhn, Marty Sider, and Trevor Bayne. Kim Kuhn, who is a veteran pit reporter with MRN, who's been in the industry for the last 10 or 11 years, it seems like. She originally was a Miss Sprint Cup, and over the last few years, she has become a pit reporter for NBC, going all the way back to 2022, and now she's working with the CW. I think Kim Kuhn, she is one of the best pit reporters we have in NASCAR currently at the moment. She's not afraid to hold back in regards to asking questions, and I really think she's going to be able to provide a lot of insight to the table. She has grown a lot in this industry, and I think that she has done overall a fantastic and really great job. And I respect the kind of craft that she's been able to provide, and I think she does a fantastic job as a pit reporter. Next, Marty Sider. This one's a no-brainer for me. Dale Jr. and Marty Snyder are really good friends off the racetrack, and Dale Jr., of course, is behind the people that he chooses to get behind the broadcast. And Marty Snyder has been in the industry since the boom of NASCAR, has been really around since the late 90s going into the early 2000s. And Marty Snyder has done a fantastic job. And I feel like in recent years, Marty Snyder has not gotten worse. He's actually gotten better. And he's been able to do some hosting with NBC during the pre-race, which I think he generally does a really, really good job. And I think he's going to be that veteran person that's really going to be able to help get the broadcasts up and running on the pit road side of things. He does a really great job, and I think Marty Snyder is going to do a fantastic job. The one I'm interested in is Trevor Bayne. Trevor Bayne has been doing stuff with Fox Sports over the course of the last couple of years, and it's going to kind of be very similar to Regan Smith on the Fox side of things. Trevor Bayne, of course, has done some broadcasting on the ARCA side of things, but has never been a pit reporter before. But I do think that Trevor Bayne will probably honestly do a really good job. He's probably going to have those nerves, very similar when Jack Harvey did the IndyCar broadcast at St. Pete, but I think he's going to grow into it very, very quickly. I would not be surprised or shocked if, I know that Fox is bringing a lot of their people in, but I would not be surprised or shocked if you do see perhaps one of these people do some work with the Fox qualifying stuff with the pit reporters being announced today. Now, all this is going to start at Charlotte in the Coast 600, but personally, I think Fox should work with Amazon to try to get a little more practice, and instead of having like Jamie Little and Larry McReynolds do the pit road side of things and Regan Smith as well for the Amazon stuff, I would love to see Kim Kuhn, Marty Snyder, and Trevor Bayne get a little bit of experience and do the pit road stuff this year. I really like what Amazon's doing. They've got Daniel Trotta being the host for the pre-race show too, and Corey LaJoie up there as well. And I think obviously you've got a really strong Amazon Prime broadcast, and I like what they're doing here. And I would have to imagine that Kim Kuhn, Marty Snyder, Trevor Bayne are also going to fall over to TNT with majority, and probably also Daniel Trotta, Corey LaJoie too are probably going to go over to TNT later this year as well, unless Shannon Spake does get involved with that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the rest of the broadcast and other broadcast lineups for the year, but I think that the Amazon Prime Pit Road group is really strong, and I really like the pit reporters they do have for 2025. Excited for Pit Road and excited to see the broadcast for Amazon in about 2 months from now. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, we already talked about this on the channel a couple times, but it was announced last week, a week ago today when you're watching this, that NASCAR officially have filed a countersuit against 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports in regards to antitrust claims, and that both 23XI and Front Row had basically gone against Act 1 of the Sherman Act, which the Sherman Trust Act is part of the countersuits in the antitrust laws that have come in over the last 50 or 100 years at this point. And NASCAR really singled in on Curtis Polk, who is Michael Jordan's longtime business partner and has helped Michael Jordan have businesses over the course of the last 30 years. And Denny Hamlin went on his podcast this past week of Actions Detrimental, you probably heard a couple days ago. He went on to defend Curtis Polk in a really, really big way, by saying that Curtis Polk is one of the best businessmen in the industry, and he doesn't really understand what NASCAR is trying to get with in regards to Curtis Polk. He says that Curtis Polk knows a lot about the sports business. He's been behind a lot of things in regards to Nike and the association with Michael Jordan, and he's really helped grow the Michael Jordan's empire in regards to everything, and he's been a big asset to helping 23XI Racing grow, bringing in sponsors, bringing in deals with the Jordan brand and Nike, and all that kind of stuff. And I think some of the things that NASCAR had accused 23XI and everyone involved like Curtis Polk, I did not agree with. And I think Denny Hamlin, no matter what, is going to defend his business partners, because Curtis Polk, I believe, is one of the co-owners of 23XI Racing and one of the higher-ups of the team and organization as well, along with working with Michael Jordan, continuing to be very, very closely. I think in regards to this lawsuit, we know that Denny Hamlin has not spoken too much about it in recent weeks. He's been kind of quiet about it and has let things play out. But I'm glad to see that Denny Hamlin is defending his business partner. Curtis Polk is a fantastic businessman. He's been behind a lot of really, really big things. And I don't agree with a lot of things that NASCAR said about Curtis Polk. But it's clear as day that NASCAR is not a big fan of Curtis Polk. They say that Curtis Polk tried to basically ensue a coup, it sounds like, and also tried to go to broadcast partners to try to prevent them from signing the media rights deal. I think it might have been NBC, I'm pretty sure, maybe Amazon as well. I think they try to stop that, maybe TNT as well, considering TNT does have big association with the NBA, which Michael Jordan is still associated with, I believe, in some way, shape, or form, though he no longer has ownership of the Charlotte Hornets or whatever the team is now currently at the moment. But I think it's good to see that Denny Hamlin is going ahead and defending his business partner, right? Because if your business partner is being attacked by the sanctioning body and being called someone that's really trying to change the sport in a bad way, which I don't agree, I think that what they're trying to do is change the sport in the best way possible. I don't agree with some of the things that NASCAR said in that lawsuit, but it is their opinion too, and they can have a right to whatever opinion they want. Of course, the appeal will take place on May 9th. We talked about that yesterday, so about 2 months from now, which will be on May 9th for the court date for the appeal of the preliminary injunction granted last year with 2311 in front row, which of course will be all the charters for drivers like Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, and Riley Herbst on the 2311 side, and Corey Hunt's involved with that in some way, shape, or form. And same thing goes for the other drivers at front row, Zane Smith, Todd Gillen, and of course Noah Gragson. Everyone involved with that team is affected by this currently at the moment. So it's going to be certainly interesting to see what happens in regards to the rest of the lawsuit, but Denny Hamlin defending his business partner is not shocking or surprising, and I think it's kind of good to see that Denny Hamlin wants to defend his business partners that are involved with 2311 Racing in some way, shape, or form. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Suarez. Now, there was a video that surfaced, I believe, from Steven Torano yesterday that got a lot of attention on Twitter and X yesterday. And this comes from Daniel Suarez's vlog from Phoenix Raceway. And you could tell in the vlog that he was not very happy. Now, why was Daniel Suarez not happy? Well, let's talk about what happened at the end of the NASCAR Cup Series race at Phoenix. So Daniel Suarez is actually having a really strong and really good run, running inside the top 10 after starting off the season on a really bad and a really terrible note. Meanwhile, Catherine Legge, she is making her NASCAR Cup Series debut, and she had spun out earlier in the race on lap number 4 of the event, but that's something we've seen in the past, and people have looped around at tracks like Phoenix in the past. It is nothing new. But the incident that caught a lot of attention on social media and a lot of people were criticizing her for is a crash that happened around 200 laps in the event, or about 215 laps in the race, when Catherine Legge spun out trying to get under Josh Berry. She went up the track a little bit, and Daniel Suarez was collected in the incident and crashed. Now, Daniel Suarez responded to what happened, and he said that he was not really mad at Catherine Legge. She deserves to be in the sport, and she should have an opportunity, and he wants to see female and women drivers be in the sport. The problem is that she probably should have not been out on the racetrack. That is what Daniel Suarez is saying, and that NASCAR needs to change the approval process. This has been a massive, massive talking point, and I don't disagree with Daniel Suarez at all in regards to NASCAR's approval process for drivers getting in the field, because it's been super, super consistent. Drivers like Tommy Joe Martins, who have a lot of experience in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, they cannot get approved to move up the Cup. Mike Wallace, same thing, even though Mike Wallace, in my opinion, should have never been approved to begin with for the Daytona 500 with his age coming into play. It's interesting that Mike Wallace wasn't approved, but Catherine Legge wasn't approved, but there are two different types of tracks. Now, obviously, Catherine Legge, and there's a lot of things that really happened. Number one, it's clear as day that she was rushed behind the wheel. It's no secret that Catherine Legge had intended to run the NASCAR Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas. The problem is, but by the time they got to COTA, it was too late and nothing was ready to go for her. And he only had 10 days to get prepared. That is not enough time for someone who doesn't have a lot of stock car experience. She's only made 2 oval starts in NASCAR competition in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, once at 2018 at Richmond, where she brought out the final caution, the Costdale Jr. shot at winning the Xfinity race there. And also, of course, she ran the ARCA opener at Daytona, which was a complete crapshoot and a shit show, and she got caught up in the crash on lap number 4 of the event. I think Daniel Suarez, what he's trying to bring up is NASCAR's inconsistency when it comes to their process. And I do think there needs to be changes in regards to who gets approved and who doesn't get approved. And I really hope that people like Catherine Legge do get the chance and opportunity to come back. And Catherine Legge's not this big name. Now, obviously, there's the open extension provisional, which is another thing we need to talk about because that's going to be a big talking point. Now, some of the things that I saw on social media in regards to Catherine Legge, I think there was a lot of incredible disrespect toward her because, yes, she made a big mistake. There's no denying it and no question about it. But people saying that she doesn't isn't a talented driver because of what happened, I think is bad. And she is a talented race car driver, but she had a very, very bad performance. And I'm not going to put all the blame on her. I blame NASCAR for approving her. I think that she could have waited a little bit down the road and maybe done a road course, even though the next road course isn't, I believe, until Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, Mexico is the next road course race. I think that would have been the perfect track to get her behind the wheel and do some racing because she, of course, has IMSA experience. I think she's had previous experience at the Mexico or Autódromo Hermanos Rodriguez track, if I'm not mistaken, and she's had a lot of it presence there. Now, obviously, there's been rumors about that track maybe not having a date, which I don't think any of that's going to be true at all. I think the race is still going to be going on in 2025, but I think that Suarez does bring up a lot of solid and very, very good points here, and I don't think Suarez is wrong about NASCAR's approval process. I think he's right. I think that NASCAR's approval process really needs to be changed because how is it that some drivers who I think are more qualified to be behind the wheel of a cup car not given a chance and opportunity? I think there's a lot of inconsistencies on there. I don't want to see people bringing up Elio Castroneves either because Elio has recent experience. And yes, Catherine Legge has recent stock car experience on road courses from 2 years ago when she competed, I believe, for JD Motorsports in the number 6 car a couple years ago. But she doesn't have much oval experience in NASCAR. And to me, I think oval experience is more important than you need more oval experience, and I think she should have had some testing. I think more practice needs to come into play, and there needs to be more testing available for some of these inexperienced drivers, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Auto Club Speedway. Now, we haven't talked a lot about Auto Club Speedway on the channel in the last couple of months. And obviously, NASCAR is currently having their West Coast swing currently at the moment. They, of course, ran at Phoenix this past week, and then they're going to run at Las Vegas this weekend, which is part of the West Coast swing. Now, one track that used to be part of the West Coast swing was Auto Club Speedway. However, Auto Club Speedway, or Next Gen California, has not hosted a date on the NASCAR schedule since 2023. The track, of course, basically kind of tore down a lot of their not the grandstands, but they've torn down a lot of the racetrack, cutting it down from 2-mile track. When they sold off, I believe, about half of like 500, like 600 acres of land, I'm pretty sure, and they sold it for around $569 million. And they've built a lot of warehouses up currently at the moment, and right now only have about 90 acres of land available for a racetrack. Now, this is put out by Adam Stern and also the LA Times, wrote a very interesting article that seemed to be very frustrating, where they says NASCAR on the possible Auto Club Speedway short track. That's number one, and this is from Dave Allen, who is the NASCAR West Coast president. Obviously, we've been there a long time. We still retain enough land to build a half-mile oval. Now, someone in a certain other part of California would like to host and basically build up a 300-acre land for a track. We would definitely like to do that as well. Now, the Auto Club short track was actually supposed to be done a couple years ago in 2022, and they were going to begin having that process start in 2019 as those images surfaced at the end of 2019, and the final race at Auto Club was supposed to take place at 2020. However, COVID struck the country, and infrastructure and costs went up very, very quickly. And with California and the rising costs, among other things in the country, it really held them off. And that's one of the reasons why they're on a standstill currently at the moment. I think the Auto Club short track is still a major priority, but they've got a lot of other options that are available currently at the moment. And NASCAR, obviously, they want to be in the Southern California market, and they want to invest in having a track in the Southern California market. But one thing, and I want to shout out Jarrett Lundberg, aka the Iceberg, bringing this up, I do think that the lawsuit between NASCAR and 2311 Front Row is playing a part in why the short track is still not done currently at the moment for 2025. The earliest we could get the short track on the schedule is like 2027 or 2028 at this rate. And the longer we go and no progress is made on the short track, the less likely that I think we are going to see a race at the Auto Club short track in the not so distant future. I think it's going to be quite some time before it happens because they're going to have to tear down not the grandstands, but they're going to have a garage outside of the track, and they're going to have to spend a lot of money, and I'm not sure they're going to do that. Now, obviously, NASCAR, like I said, they want to stay in the Southern California market, and there have been some rumors and some speculation recently about tracks like Long Beach hosting a NASCAR date, and NASCAR had been trying last year in the beginning of the year around March. They were trying to acquire the rights to the Long Beach Grand Prix that only lasted for like a week or so, but with Roger Penske being involved now and owning it, there is certainly a possibility that NASCAR down the road, though not completely likely, there is still a chance and possibility that we could see a race at Long Beach in the near future. But the other one that keeps getting brought up currently at the moment is San Diego. There's been a lot of rumors currently that San Diego is going to take over the street race from the Chicago Street Course, as the Chicago Street Course is expected to be in its final year of its contract. There's been also talk about Chicago and maybe getting a Cup Series day in 2026. But we've had multiple rumors and reports coming out that San Diego could potentially be looking to host a date. The problem is that San Diego is a couple hours farther south than Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is one of the biggest markets that NASCAR in the country has currently at the moment. And I think NASCAR would absolutely love to still be in that Southern California market around the Los Angeles area. The problem is Irwindale Speedway, that is no longer around. The property owners apparently have kicked everybody out, including Tim Huddleston. And basically a lot of the tracks around the area are not doing very great currently at the moment, and it seems like the future of Southern California motorsports is very uncertain currently at the moment, unless you take a look at Long Beach. I think that if you're in NASCAR's shoes, you have to start looking at San Diego for the next couple of years. Now, do I think there's a chance that Auto Club could get back on the NASCAR schedule down the road if they could invest in it? I think there's definitely a chance and possibility. I would not rule that out. However, I think the chances are becoming more and more unlikely and less likely that it's going to happen, which is a shame because I would absolutely love to see Auto Club come back on the schedule and have the short track as a season finale, because if it's every bit of criteria, we've seen improvements on the short track racing in NASCAR, and I think it'd be absolutely huge if they could find a way to get this track done. I don't know if it's going to happen, though, at this point. And the longer we go and the more we stand still and wait, the less likely we're going to be waiting. That's what we kind of thought about the NASCAR Canada track that was going to be coming around in the mid to late 2000s. And that project was around for like 15 years, and they really were never ever able to get that track set up and ready to go. So to me, I think in regards to Auto Club and the future of that track, I don't know if the track is even going to be around. I would not be surprised in the next couple years if they sell off the land and maybe now return to the Southern California market, even though, like I already mentioned and said, NASCAR does want to 100% be in the Southern California market, but I'm not sure if that is going to happen at this point. We're just going to have to wait and see in regards to Auto Club in the Southern California market down the road, and if they're going to go back to Auto Club, but I'm not sure if it is going to happen overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Carl Edwards. Now, we already talked about the Amazon pit reporters that have been announced for 2025. But there's been a lot of reports in regards to Carl Edwards that have come out earlier today. And the big one, which we talked about on the channel yesterday, as you guys saw yesterday on the channel, it was announced today that Carl Edwards will officially be joining Amazon Prime Video in 2025, and he will be a studio analyst for the pre-race show and the post-race show as well. He will join Daniel Trotta, who will be the pre-race and post-race show studio host, and he'll also join Corey LaJoie, who will be a driver analyst in that group as well. I think these three are going to do a very, very good job. While Carl Edwards has been kind of away from the sport in recent years, we've seen TV trying to court him. I know Jennifer had reported a couple months back they were trying to court Carl Edwards to do some broadcasting stuff with Amazon, and basically was confirmed during when he was inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame that this was very, very likely. And now Carl Edwards, of course, has been around the sport a lot more in the last year or so. He's been showing up to a lot more racetracks. We doubt he would be showing up to racetracks a lot more, but we weren't sure how big of a capacity he was going to be showing up. But he's going to be showing up in a much more bigger and a much more massive capacity. Now, one question that was brought up, and this is something that got brought up, we talked about this on the channel at the beginning of the year, is will there be a possibility of Carl Edwards driving number 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports? Kyle Larson has said this during the offseason that he would love to have Carl Edwards behind the wheel of the number 5 car when Kyle Larson is attempting to qualify for the Indianapolis 500. Something very similar to what Kevin Harvick did last year for Fox, where he got behind the wheel of the number 5 car for a practice session. It sounds like, according to Jordan Bianchi, was the first report this story, and it sounds like Carl Edwards is expected to decline to drive that number 5 car. I'm definitely disappointed to hear that news because I think Carl Edwards driving number 5 car, at least for a practice session, will be something that could bring a lot of closure to the fans and a lot more closure to the public as well. Because I think a lot of us have been wondering if Carl Edwards could still be there. Because you look at Carl Edwards, well, Carl Edwards is almost 50 years old at this point. Carl Edwards is someone that still can be very, very competitive. And I think Carl Edwards left at a really, really bad time. Now, obviously, Carl Edwards is also going to be on the Dale Jr. Dow, and he's going to probably explain some of the decisions why he did walk away from the sport, and you'll probably hear that on when we talk about that. Some of the stuff from the Dale Jr. Dow episode we'll probably talk about on Friday of this week. But I think joining the Amazon team, they've got a really strong core lineup in 2025. Obviously, Adam Alexander being the lead studio, being the lead play-by-play guy. Adam Alexander is one of the most underrated play-by-play individuals in NASCAR ever, and I think he's done an absolutely amazing, really good job as a play-by-play for the Xfinity Series and also the Fox Xfinity Series broadcast over the last couple of years. You think about Dale Jr. Dale Jr. is one of the best color commentators we've ever seen. He's this generation's Benny Parsons, and he's done a fantastic job being in that broadcast position. And then, of course, you have Steve Letarte, the crew chiefing side, the new Larry McReynolds when it comes to crew chiefs. He does a really good job in the broadcast booth and generally provides a lot of really good analysis and is still involved in the sport in some way, shape, or form. On the pit road side of things, you've got Kim Kuhn, Trevor Bayne, Marty Sider. All these individuals are really strong in their own way, shape, or form, and I think they've all done a really great and fantastic job over the years. I'm very intrigued to see how Trevor Bayne is going to do on the pit road side of things, but I think he'll get a lot of that experience, and I think he definitely will be ready to be put into that position this year. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, Daniel Trotta, Corey LaJoie, and Carl Edwards. All of them working together is going to be very fascinating and really, really fun to watch. But going back to Carl Edwards, it's just really exciting to see that Carl Edwards is getting back involved in the sport in some way, shape, or form because it's been a very long time. Carl Edwards has not had any involvement in the sport really over the course of the last couple of years. I know Denny Hamlin had offered him a chance and opportunity to drive a 2311 racing car, but Carl Edwards did say last year when it was announced he'd be inducted in the Hall of Fame that he basically need cars to have a little more horsepower for it to happen, so that's probably not going to happen at this point unless NASCAR does increase the horsepower, which there's been some rumors and speculation, especially with Dodge and Honda potentially coming in, and new BOP performances coming in with torque sensors being added to these Cup cars currently at the moment. There's potential possibility of increased horsepower with that new electric component that could be coming in as early as 2026 or 2027. So that could certainly be something to watch. He has done some work and helped out Trackhouse. He did some simulator work for Toyota. And I think he might do some testing down the road. But I don't know if we'll ever see him back behind the wheel of a race car ever. Which, if Carl Edwards ever wants to get back behind the wheel of a race car, he doesn't have to. But I think for Carl, it's just really good to see that he is back in the sport in some way, shape, or form with the Amazon Prime team. And I think that he's going to do a fantastic job. When he called races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series a couple years ago, or back like in the mid-2000s to the late 2000s and early 2010s for ESPN, and when he called that Cup Series race at Darlington, the park he was in the booth for the throwback race during NASCAR's 75-year celebration at Darlington, he did an amazing job in the booth. It felt natural. It looked really, really good. And he just sounded like he'd not been out of the sport ever. It sounded like he knew what he's doing. He brought that charisma. And I think he did a fantastic job. Obviously, Clint Boyd asked if he's going to get back behind the wheel of the race car, get more involved in the sport, which I think this is about the best, closest you can get. Well, he's not getting back behind the wheel of a race car, at least currently at the moment right now. I think it's really huge that we are going to see him in the broadcast booth and be involved in the sport a lot more frequently. He's going to be at the track a lot more, and I think that we could see him maybe do some broadcast stuff with Amazon before they even get on the air very, very soon. So I'm excited to see what Carl Edwards can provide, and I think he's going to do fantastic, and I think it's just so cool to see Carl Edwards back in the sport. It's been so long since he's returned. He's going to do the TV stuff, which is exciting. Well, like I said, it doesn't sound like he's going to drive the number 5 car currently at the moment. It's really awesome and amazing to hear that he'll be back in the broadcast this year and doing some broadcast stuff because he's so good at it. He was so good a few years ago. He really sounds like someone who knows what he's doing. He knows the right things to say, and I think he's going to do a fantastic job doing the studio stuff. So I'm excited to see him back in the sport as a whole, and I think it's just a great story that he's coming back.
I think it's fun and glad to see Carl Edwards doing work with Amazon in 2025. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about Carl Edwards returning to NASCAR on the broadcasting side of things? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the Auto Club future? Do you think Auto Club will be back on the schedule ever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, we're going to see the NASCAR Xfinity Series race picks for the Legge at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Then tomorrow, we're going to see the NASCAR Cup picks for the Pennzoil 400, and you also will see the paint scheme video for that race as well. We'll be taking a look at that really awesome looking Red Bull paint scheme from Shane Van Gisbergen. And then, of course, tomorrow on Friday, we'll have a NASCAR news video more than likely. We'll talk about some stuff from that Carl Edwards podcast, and we also will have the Truck Series race review from the race for the truck event. And, of course, got other content dropping. Also dropped my truck picks earlier today as well. We're going to have reactions to Xfinity Cup. We're also going to have a Shane Van Gisbergen video dropping. Talk about other people like Haley Deegan, Carl Edwards, Eric Almirola, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, the loss between 2011 front row, Honda, Dodge, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. And same with Sam Mayer too. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank, and please follow in case I look up all the good stuff and Mr.Beast as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.